Hi everyone, and welcome to our mastermind group. I am just so excited that this is the first of 10 lessons that we're going to be sharing and working on together. I'm so excited to hopefully be able to bring some value to you to help increase your leadership lid. If you're here and your lid's here, maybe we can just open that lid and bring it up to right here. I'm so excited that we get to go through one of my favorite books, and a book that's changed my life by my friend John Maxwell. Everyone communicates, few connect. As a matter of fact, the subject of connecting is very near and dear to me, and it's something that I'm constantly evolving and learning in my own professional and personal life. And I hope as we take this time and go through these many different lessons and skills, that not only will you have some value added, but I'll also learn many things from you guys as well. So thanks so much for being with us. Let's go ahead and dive into lesson number 1. And you should have your worksheets right now. Go ahead and take those out. Make sure you have a pen or a pencil, something to write with. We're going to jump right into our lesson here and fill in some blanks so that you'll be prepared for your next mastermind meeting. Number 1. We're going to talk about how connecting increases your influence in every situation. So for the foundation of today's teaching and today's lesson, we're going to talk about and make sure that we all have a grasp on why connecting with people is so vital to your success. And that's the goal, and that's the foundation before we get into anything else. We're just going to try to answer the why. Why is connection or connecting so vital to your success? Ralph Nichols, in your notes, you can refer down to that, says the number 1 criteria for advancement and promotion for professionals is the ability to communicate effectively. You know, I think that the ability to communicate, and not just communicate, but connect as well, I mean really connect, is the number 1 criteria for success in your family, success with your children, with your spouse, and your friendships that you have in your community, maybe at your workplace, at your with your boss or your co-workers. The ability to connect is what's going to make, I believe, you the most successful in all of these areas. And that's why we're going to be going through this time and this study together. Robert Delick, in your notes here, who's the presidential historian, says that successful presidents exhibit 5 skills and qualities that enable them to achieve things that others don't. Now we're talking about leaders here, and these are our presidents, and we're talking about what these leaders do well so that they can be successful above other average leaders. Number 1, they have vision. Go ahead and write that down. They have vision. Number 2 is pragmatism, which is simply just being practical in your daily and business dealings. Number 3, consensus building. You know, getting a team together of people who can come to a consensus, a group of people. Number 4 is charisma. And number 5 is trustworthiness. Now, what sets the average presidents apart from the ones that are just exceptional and really successful are these skills. This is what the historian says, are these 5 skills. And oddly enough, 4 out of these 5 skills have to do with connecting. We can probably pull out number 2, which is pragmatism, the idea of being practical. We can probably pull that out, but when we look at all 4 others, they all have to do somewhat with connecting. And in your mastermind group, there might be an opportunity for you to go through a little more in depth on these 4 skills, depending on your facilitator. But to go in a little deeper, let me define what connecting is. In your notes, we put down that connecting is the ability to identify with people and to relate to them in such a way that increases our influence with them. So connecting is identifying with someone, which is understanding what someone is going through or getting what they're saying, and then also relating to them, also being able to walk in their shoes, putting yourself in their shoes and relating to them in such a way that it increases your influence with that person. And by doing this, I believe that this is what's going to increase our influence with others. And in your notes, and you know John Maxwell always says that leadership simply is influence. So let's kind of back that up for a minute. If leadership is influence, and to influence others more effectively, we need to connect. And to connect, we have to identify with people and relate to people so that we can be successful. And if we're successful with those things, we'll influence others better, thus we'll become a better leader. So, I'm thinking about myself and why this is so important to me, and I have never been. A matter of fact, the idea of connecting with me is something that's fairly new. I've always grown up being a communicator. As a matter of fact, from a young age, I've communicated with people. My dad had put me in the teenage years as a young teenager into the seat in his office at one of his desks and put a phone in my hand and a leads list and said, call these people up and book appointments. And I would have to communicate to people things. I'd have to read a script. I would have to say certain things to cold call. It taught me how to communicate, and through the years of being a teenager, I had so many opportunities to communicate effectively. I was able to speak with as little as in front of 5 people to well over 500, maybe even 1,000 people. Even if it was for a short period of time, I was able to polish and perfect my communicating skills, but I never really learned about what connecting was, and I had seen that there was something missing. It was something in my life that I could turn an audience on, but on a one-on-one level, it was hard for me to communicate, it was hard for me to connect with people. And this is why, because I never related to people. I never put myself in their shoes. I never had the thought about how to add value to them and identify what they were going through. So when I look in my life now, and it was only recently, the last few years, where I've understand connection and where I've been thrusted in that position. As a matter of fact, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to work alongside of probably 70 or so volunteers. And you know for a fact that a volunteer who's not being paid for something, if you're only communicating and not connecting, that they'll probably walk out the door. Matter of fact, you can communicate all you want, but if they don't like you and you're not relating to them, they can leave because they don't have a paycheck. And they don't have a reason to stay. I've been married for almost 4 years now, and boy, I can tell you that if I didn't connect well with my wife, it would be a rocky marriage. I mean, if I just communicated with her all the time, and what's the secret that everyone says to marriage is great communication? Well, I want to expand on that and say not only communication, but connecting. If I didn't relate to my wife, if I didn't connect with her and understand her better, we'd probably have a rocky marriage. If I just communicated to her and gave her advice and packed her and sent her on her merry way and said, hey, if you need something else, come on back, and I'll communicate to you again and send you packing. I don't know that my wife would like that very much. But I really needed to learn how to connect with her so that our relationship could be more successful. There's been a lot of times in my life when there's been a disconnect, and we know when that is, right? I mean, when you're talking to somebody, you can just feel a disconnect. Matter of fact, someone's talking, they're complaining, they're just sucking the life out of you, and you say, gosh, I wish I could just tap this person on the shoulder and say, gosh, the phone is ringing, friend, but no one's picking it up, no one's answering the phone. So please stop calling, stop talking, please. You know when there's a disconnect, and you know when there is a connection, but sometimes it's hard for us to identify what those signals are. So what we wrote down, and let's go back to your notes, are connecting signals, things and signals that we can look at so that we are aware when we're connecting effectively to people. Number 1, extra effort. People always go the extra mile when you put in extra effort. Unsolicited appreciation. So they're saying positive things when you're connecting with them, and there's a sense of unsolicited appreciation. They're saying positive things about you and to you. There's a sense of unguarded openness. They demonstrate trust. They trust you. Increased communication. That's another signal. They express themselves more often and a lot more ready. There's a sense of an enjoyable experience. They feel good about where they're going and what they're doing. There's a synergy, between the two of you. It's enjoyable. There's a synergy. There's a sense of emotional bondedness. There's a display, they display a connection on a deeper level than surface. It's an emotional level. The next is there's a sense of a positive energy. Their emotional batteries are charged just by being together with you. There's a sense of a growing synergy. As connection increases between the two of you, it just builds and gets better and builds more, and it's a synergy. It grows. And lastly, when you connect with people, there really is just a sense of unconditional love, and I love that one. They are accepting without any reservation. We put down a story here. It's one of John's favorite stories that he tells, and I love it. Follow along. I'll read it. I think you'll really like it. This is what happens. This is the story of what happens when we don't connect well with other people. It's the story of Jorge Rodriguez, who is the bank robber. Go ahead and follow along with me. Jorge Rodriguez was an Old West bank robber from Mexico who operated along the Texas border around 1900. Rodriguez was so successful that the Texas Rangers established a special force just to try and stop him. Late one afternoon, one of these special rangers saw Rodriguez slipping across the border back into Mexico and trailed him at a discreet distance. He watched as the outlaw returned to his home village and mingled with the people in the square. When Rodriguez went to his favorite cantina to relax, the ranger kind of slipped in and managed to get the drop on him. With a pistol to the bank robber's head, the lawman said, "Jorge Rodriguez, I know who you are. I've come to get back all the money that you've stolen from all the banks in Texas. Unless you give it to me now, I'm going to blow your brains out." Well, Rodriguez could see the man's badge, and he could discern this hostile intent, but there was one problem. He didn't speak English. He began speaking rapidly in Spanish, but the ranger couldn't understand what he said because he didn't speak Spanish. Imagine being in that situation. Just then, a young boy came up and said in English, "I can help. I speak English and Spanish. Do you want me to be your translator?" The ranger nodded yes. The boy quickly explained everything the ranger had said. Nervously, Rodriguez answered, "Tell the big Texas Ranger that I have not spent a cent of the money. If he will go into the town well, face north, count down 5 stones, he will find a loose one there. Pull it out, and the money is behind there. Please, please, tell him quickly." I guess Jorge Rodriguez didn't want to get his brains blown out, right? The boy looked back at the ranger and said, "Senor Rodriguez is a brave man. He says he's ready to die." That's funny. He looked back and just told him that I guess he's ready to die. Poor Jorge Rodriguez, right? I mean, he had one problem in his life, and the problem is simple. He couldn't connect. And because he couldn't connect, most likely that ranger pulled the trigger and blew his brains out. Only if he could connect better. Back to your notes here. The ability to connect with others begins simply with understanding the value of people. Now, I'm going to repeat that because that's just really important. The ability to connect with others begins with understanding the value of people. Jim Collins, the author of the book Good to Great, observes that those who build great companies understand that the ultimate throttle of growth for any company is not the market they're in or the technology they have or the competition that surrounds them, the products that they produce. It's one thing above all. And here we go. The ability to keep and get enough people. The ability to get and keep enough of the right people. That has to do with connecting. Jay Hall of the consulting firm Telemetrics has studied the performance of over 16,000 executives and found a direct correlation between the achievement and success of those executives and business owners and the ability of those people to care for and to connect with their people. Interesting stat. The ones who were the most successful, the 16,000, had a correlation of a great sense and ability to connect and care for their people. And here's a few of their findings. Let's go back to your notes. We're going to kind of read from left to right here, starting with high achievers, and you can fill in the spots. High achievers, they found that the high achievers cared about people as well as profits, whereas the average achievers concentrated on production. And low achievers were preoccupied with their own security. Back to the left, high achievers, achievers viewed subordinates optimistically. They were positive and excited about their subordinates, while average achievers were focused more on their own status or their own job title. While low achievers, they just showed a basic distrust of anyone below them. Perhaps they think they're always stealing something, right? High achievers sought advice from those under them. Average achievers were reluctant to seek advice from those underneath them. They were reluctant. And low achievers just didn't seek advice at all. High achievers were great listeners, probably to anybody who would come their way, who was a subordinate, person over them, of influence. They were great listeners, while average achievers listened only to superiors. And low achievers, they avoided communication altogether, and they relied simply on the policy manual that was given to them. Good old policy manuals. If you're relying on policy manuals, or you know someone who is, I just encourage you to be cautious on that. Not a lot of great connecting that you can find in a piece of paper and policy manuals. So to wrap it up here, it really is true as we kind of go through this worksheet here, that the ability to connect simply increases your influence with everyone. It really does. And if your influence can be increased, you will also become a better leader for it. It will always add value to everything you're doing and everywhere you're going. If you connect with people, it always adds value. And connecting always makes you better in your communication and always better in your leadership. So as we spend the next few weeks together, and we're going to continue to do these videos, I hope you really enjoy understanding the benefits of what connecting does as we get deeper into these lessons. So on to your next mastermind group. It's great to be with you today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.